It looks like a much smaller meeting because all of the administrators are in one giant room together. So that's why it looks much tinier than usual. So good morning to all. So for those who don't know me, my name's Amy Laughlin. I work in youth services at the main library. My pronouns are she, her. And today I'm going to be talking about the Black Panthers. So I'm not an expert, and I just want to start off by saying that I'm more of somebody who has just become aware and wants to share that awareness. So I'll just start off with a brief not read aloud, but just a brief bit of information about the Black Panthers. So the Black Panthers were also known as the Black Panther Party. They were a political organization founded in 1966 by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale to challenge police brutality against the African American community. Dressed in black berets and black leather jackets, the Black Panthers organized armed citizen patrols of Oakland and other United States cities. At its peak in 1968, the Black Panther Party had roughly 2,000 members. The organization later declined as a result of internal tensions, deadly shootouts, and FBI counterintelligence activities aimed at weakening the organization. So I just want to let people sit with that last statement. I'll read it again. They actually disbanded and eventually lost their influence due to the FBI counterintelligence and the FBI's involvement in weakening the organization. So I have several videos that I'd like to share because I think that videos are a little bit more dynamic than listening to me talk on a little Zoom box. And the videos that I'm going to share, I have several. The first is about Malcolm X, because without Malcolm X's influence and his leadership, there would not be a Black Panther Party. So I'm going to queue up my first video. These are brief. They're about 2 or 3 minutes, and then I have a couple longer ones that if we have time, we will watch those as well. So without further ado, I'm going to share the screen. All right, so folks, I'm going to mute myself, and I do the same thing in story times. If you can hear me, if you can hear the video, please give me a thumbs up. That way I'll know that the sound is working.
Malcolm X's strident critique of the nonviolent philosophy of the civil rights movement sowed the seeds for the flowering of black nationalism in the second half of the 1960s. Malcolm spent his youth in northern and midwestern cities, but he was profoundly transformed in prison when he joined the Nation of Islam, a religious movement led by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It combined black nationalism with the Islamic faith and embraced the concept of black self-defense.
Malcolm X realized that while Martin Luther King was preaching nonviolence and peace, you had to send a message. He was a warrior, he was a general, and they feared him.
Malcolm encouraged his followers to achieve empowerment
by any means necessary. We intend to fire our people up so much until if they can't have their equal share in the house, they'll burn it down.
Dr. King felt that Malcolm's talk of violence was counterproductive and ultimately would, quote, reap nothing but grief.
The Negroes themselves should take whatever steps necessary to defend themselves.
Malcolm X's influence was profound in terms of the way African Americans looked at themselves and the way that the nation began to look at them. It called for black dignity, black self-respect.
Malcolm was adamant that words associated with slavery, such as Negro and colored, should be discarded for black and Afro-American. His theories and his philosophy formed the foundation of the ideology of black power.
Malcolm X is the key common denominator for all black power activists. They use his speeches, they use his political thought, both in the Nation of Islam and outside of the Nation of Islam, as a sort of blueprint or framework for their own political activism.
The tensions that had been building between Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm reached a breaking point after Malcolm made a controversial comment following the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, leading to a bitter split. Facing a spiritual crisis, Malcolm turned inward, dedicating much of his time to learning more about his faith, including undertaking the Muslims' sacred pilgrimage to Mecca. Tragically, members of the Nation of Islam would assassinate Malcolm before his new philosophy could gain momentum. But his autobiography would become a key text of the Black Revolution, and it remains a key part of the American literary canon today. From Chuck D of Public Enemy to President Barack Obama, Malcolm X's bold and resonant voice has inspired generations to fight the power. Through his writings and speeches, Malcolm's message to Black people to take control of their own destiny lives on.
Sorry, I had to stop sharing to unmute myself. Apologies. So I just wanted to show that video first because that kind of lays the framework for how the Black Panthers were able to capitalize on this movement started by Malcolm X. And I want to show another brief video. It's about 2 minutes about the birth of the Black Panthers. Bear with me. Usually I'm much faster at this. I'm nervous. Okay, here we go. Again, if somebody can give me a thumbs up that they can see this. I saw Melanie last time, so thank you, Melanie. That they can hear this, sorry, that you can hear this.
In October 1966, Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton, a pair of students in Oakland, galvanized by Malcolm X's philosophy of Black self-determination, launched the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Their goal was to protect their community from racism and violence, which meant protecting it from the police.
When we first started, we had a police alert patrol, and we would patrol the community. If we saw the police brutalizing anyone, we'd put an end to this. Usually the police wouldn't brutalize anyone if we were on hand.
Did the Panthers embrace a willingness to use arms to defend themselves? Absolutely. Unfortunately, that's usually the only part of the story that we get. Even more energy was expended in social programs.
The Panthers put their revolutionary philosophy into practical action. They developed programs targeted at poor Black people. They provided the community with free medical care, including sickle cell screening programs, as well as clothing for the needy. Many believe that the Panthers' free breakfast program for school children helped inspire the USDA's federal breakfast program.
We were not for integration, we were for self-determination. We wanted to have the right to determine ourselves what we wanted. Economic opportunity, decent education, access to the full complement of privileges, benefits, and responsibilities of any American.
Not even the FBI was able to stop the spread of the Panthers' ideals, encouraging Black people to defend themselves from police brutality and fight for their rights. Decades later, the Black Panthers' legacy continues to live in a variety of political, cultural, and social realms, most recently in the Black Lives Matter movement.
So I want to show a video, actually. It's about 10 minutes long. And I watched it yesterday and I watched it again this morning. There's a brief period in the middle that's a little bit, oops, might be playing. Hold on, sorry. There's a brief period in the middle where it's just a little boring, but at the end is really where the amazing information comes out. And this video is about an assassination of one of the major Black Panther Party leaders. His name was Fred Hampton, and his assassination, it is an assassination. So an assassination is different than a murder because it's motivated by political intent. And so he was assassinated by the FBI. The FBI had an informant that they had basically, what's the word I'm looking for? They had gotten into the Black Panther Party, and they were essentially a mole. And so this is a video about how in recent years, there was a group of civil rights attorneys who were petitioning with a Freedom of Information Act request. They FOIA'd the government for information about this assassination, and the government was absolutely against it. And they discuss how they actually had an extraordinarily racist judge who went through 18 months of trial, testimony, requests, petitions. And at 18 months into the trial, the judge basically was like, I'm not even going to let the jury decide this. I'm going to throw it out, which is absolutely not how the law works. So I just want to show this video. It's 10 minutes long. Just wanted to let everybody know. Go back to my share.
The Quarantine Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. As Black History Month begins today, we look back at the assassination of Black Panther leader Fred Hampton in Chicago 51 years ago, and how new documents reveal more details about the FBI's role in the murder of the 21-year-old revolutionary. Fred Hampton was killed December 4th, 1969, when Chicago police raided his apartment and shot and killed him in his own bed. Black Panther leader Mark Clark was also killed by police in that raid. Authorities initially claimed the Panthers had opened fire on the police who were there to serve a search warrant for weapons. Evidence later emerged that told a very different story. The FBI, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, and Chicago police had conspired to assassinate Fred Hampton. Now, several hundred pages of FBI memos and reports obtained by historian and writer Aaron Leonard through a Freedom of Information Act request document that the director of the FBI's Domestic Intelligence Division, William Sullivan, and the head of the extremist section of the Domestic Intelligence Division, George Moore, both played key roles in planning the raid and the cover-up that followed. For more on what these documents say, we're joined by Flint Taylor and Jeff Haas, founding members of the People's Law Office in Chicago, who are the lead lawyers in the landmark Fred Hampton and Mark Clark civil rights case. Their new piece for Truth Out is headlined, "New Documents Suggest J. Edgar Hoover Was Involved in Fred Hampton's Murder." Jeff Haas, let's begin with you. You wrote a book about Fred Hampton. Talk about what these new documents show and what you see as the smoking gun of J. Edgar Hoover's direct involvement.
Thank you, Amy. Well, first of all, it's 51 years after the incident and 40-some years after the trial. We had never gotten these documents before. But what they showed was that Hoover and Sullivan and Moore were following Roy Mitchell, a special agent in charge, very closely with regard to O'Neill. And they were complimenting him and rewarding him from the moment he gave the information and the floor plan to Special Agent Mitchell. They were congratulating Mitchell on what a wonderful job he did with this informant. Of course, Mitchell got the floor plan, gave it to Hanrahan's police, and that's what led to the raid. The floor plan even showed the bed where Hampton and Johnson would be sleeping. So we knew much of this. We knew O'Neill had gotten a bonus. We never knew Mitchell got a bonus. And we never knew that Hoover and Sullivan and Moore were starting to watch this in November, 10 days before it happened. They were monitoring exactly what went on. And so it was approved at the highest level. And during the trial, we had sought to go up to Sullivan and Moore and Hoover, but the judge wouldn't allow us, and we thought perhaps even John Mitchell and Richard Nixon were involved. We didn't have these documents, so we couldn't uncover that. This also shows that after the raid, the head of the FBI in Chicago met with and congratulated the informant O'Neill, thanked him for his information, which led to the success of the raid. What's also interesting is 51 years later, these documents still have redactions. There's a specific redaction because an FBI agent had been called in front of a grand jury, and he was told, if you get asked any questions about blank, which is the FBI, leave the grand jury and report to your higher-ups. A year after the raid, the FBI role and COINTELPRO had never been disclosed. It was only about Hanrahan and the police. So it took us 13 years to uncover that it was COINTELPRO, a program whose objective was disrupt, destroy, and neutralize the Panthers, and specifically prevent the rise of a black messiah like Fred Hampton, who could unify and electrify the masses. It was this FBI program that led to the passing of the floor plan and the 90 shots, and Fred Hampton executed in his bed at 2:30 in the morning on December 4th.
Now, Jeff, the documents also seem to indicate that there was a plan to cover up the FBI's involvement in the raid. Could you talk about that aspect of what you've uncovered?
Yes, at the grand jury, this was a special state grand jury, because the black community was so outraged and there was a lot of pressure, they called a special grand jury. Well, they allowed the FBI agent who talked about who fired the guns, but they didn't allow anybody to talk about the floor plan or the role of the informant, William O'Neill, in setting up the raid and getting a bonus for it. So that was kept quiet. Matter of fact, if there hadn't been a raid at the Media, Pennsylvania FBI office, we might never have learned about COINTELPRO.
And in terms of why it's taken so long and there's still redactions on some of these documents, I mean, there's the assassination of President Kennedy, there have been documents released from that. And here we have one radical revolutionary in Chicago, and it's taken so long just to get information about what actually happened.
Well, yes, I think the cover-up continues, and the fact that many of these pages contain redaction, including the information from O'Neill. So there are things the FBI has still not released, we think, showing the involvement of higher-ups. We do have a continuous rewarding of the Special Agent Roy Mitchell, referring to the success of the raid, how the raid was critical to the role of the FBI. So see, some of these documents are new. But for the next year, Roy Mitchell got congratulated for how well he had handled O'Neill and how important the information had gotten. And they continuously internally call the raid a success, while externally they were hiding it.
I want to bring Flint Taylor into this conversation, co-founder of the People's Law Office in Chicago. You and Jeff were arrested for protesting what you called in the piece the outrageous rulings of the judge and the blatant misconduct of the defense. Can you explain what this trial was, Flint?
Well, this was a trial, 18 months on trial, Jeff and I and others in our office, fighting to get these documents out, fighting to establish the role of the FBI. And we had a judge who was very similar to Judge Hoffman in the Conspiracy 8 trial, which many people may remember. And he was dead set against us. He was originally from Alabama. He was a racist, and he did not believe and would not let us get at the evidence that the FBI was involved in this case. But we were developing this evidence along with the Senate Select Committee, the Church Committee. So we were exposing this evidence both in court and outside of court, and the judge was getting more and more upset with us. And so when we protested the unfair rulings that he was making, he was keeping us from putting Hoover in the case. He was keeping us from putting John Mitchell and the others from Washington in the case. And he was keeping us from getting the documents that showed the bonus to O'Neill, the informant. All of this we were fighting for day and day after day. And when we protested, both of us at various times were held in contempt and sent to the federal lockup here in Chicago. But we kept fighting it. The judge threw the case out after 18 months of trial, believe it or not. He wouldn't let the jury decide the case. We fought to appeal, and we won a remarkable decision in the Court of Appeals, defended it in the U.S. Supreme Court, and 13 years of litigation and fighting to get the evidence out, we were ultimately able to obtain one of the largest, if not the largest, police violence settlement for the families of Mark Clark and Fred Hampton and the surviving Panthers in the history at that time of the federal courts.
And Flint, for the younger members of our audience who really do not perhaps understand the role and significance of the Black Panther Party, and for instance, J. Edgar Hoover labeling them the greatest domestic threat to the U.S. government. Hoover was aware by then, although the public found out later, that there had been polling done, secret polling done, that showed that more than 25% of all African Americans at the time supported the Black Panther Party. Could you talk about the party's significance?
Party was very significant, and its leadership was as well. And Fred Hampton was not only an up-and-coming leader, but a very charismatic and dynamic leader. And the Panthers had a 10-point program. That program covered the waterfront, with all sorts of revolutionary and socialistic programs, free breakfast program, for example, free medical clinic, for another example, a newspaper that came out every week and talked about the atrocities of the police and the government. It was very much an anti-imperialist organization, fought against the war in Vietnam, said people should not go to Vietnam, opposed mass incarceration before there actually was that term, and also was very strong in setting up and fighting for coalitions between Black, Hispanic, or like the Young Lords, of course, you know about that, Juan, and other organizations, revolutionary and radical organizations. And this is another reason why Hoover feared the Panthers so much, because they were bringing together all sorts of different radical and revolutionary groups, groups against the war in Vietnam. And this was very threatening to the government at that time. And they targeted under the COINTELPRO program, which was focused to destroy the Black Panther Party, on Fred Hampton and the Black Panthers, because they were so successful here in Chicago.
So after I watched that video, I was extremely mad, extremely angry, and maybe you are as well. It's just absolutely, I mean, what we've been talking about and learning is like systemic racism and systemic violence is often state sanctioned. And this is direct evidence that it was and likely still is. So to cheer everybody up, I have one last video that I think will probably put a smile on your face. Before I play it, I actually want to read a quote that I came across in something that the Youth Services Department is working on right now. We're doing our own anti-racist work with Project Ready. And the quote is, "The goal of anti-racist work is not to make race invisible, but rather to make systems of inequity based on race apparent to all so that they can be dismantled." So I think that part of watching these videos and learning about this history of not just Black Americans, but how Black Americans have influenced all of our histories, I think that's the most important part of this journey, is kind of understanding that we might not learn about these influences because the people in power have decided that it's not something that we need to learn about. Well, I disagree, and I think that learning about the Black Panthers and their influence is extremely important. So with that, the last video I have, and then I do have some book and movie recommendations, because what librarian doesn't have those? The last video I'm going to show is a 6-minute video of kids meet former Black Panthers. And if this doesn't put a smile on your face, I'm not sure what will, but here we go. All right.
Personally know your bodyguards, like, or were they just, did you personally know your bodyguards, like, or were they, did you personally know your bodyguards, like, or were they just two
Yes.
people?
No, I knew my bodyguards. Well, at least I thought I did. One of them turned out to be an FBI agent.
Hi, I'm Talbot.
Hi, Talbot. I'm Elmer.
Hi.
Pleased
Nice to meet you, Elmer.
And
Hi, I'm Vanessa. It's nice to meet
hi,
you.
Vanessa. You guys look like brother and sister.
We're
Yeah,
twins.
we're twins.
You're kidding.
Hi, I'm Josh.
I'm Marcia.
Nice to meet you, Marcia.
Good to meet you too.
So you were apparently a former Black Panther.
Yes, I was a former Black Panther. What do you know about the Black Panthers?
They were founded in 1966, I think. And like a thing that initiated it was the shooting of Malcolm X.
Okay, that's good stuff. What did you know?
I think I read the same webpage as she does. So
Okay.
I think so
the same
too.
stuff.
What is the Black Panthers?
The Black Panther Party was an organization, because we are no longer an organization, that was formed to fight against racism in this country.
What made you want to join?
What made me want to join was the civil rights movement. A lot of young people had grown up into activism. I marched with Dr. King when I was your age. There was another gentleman by the name of Malcolm X who said that we were going to get our freedom by whatever means necessary. So if you hit us, we're going to hit you back. If you shoot at us, we're going to shoot back. And so the Black Panther Party took on that philosophy. And so because we dared to stand up and defend ourselves, we were named the #1 threat to the internal security of the United States by the director of the FBI.
That's not good.
Did you ever feel like scared to join a like a community where the FBI and stuff probably didn't like it that much.
Of course, there are those elements, you know, people who were like, these are militant people, they should be off the street. The average person really admired what we were doing. We did things like the sickle cell anemia testing.
Really?
It was the Black Panther Party that created national attention that this is a disease that has to be cured.
And if you go to school, do you get a breakfast in school now?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's because of what the Black Panther Party did. We fed thousands of kids here in Seattle every day a hot breakfast before they went to school.
Did you get like paid for working for the Black Panther, or was it just
Let me think. Never got paid.
Did you have to be black to be a Black Panther?
The answer is kind of yes and no. We actually had a couple of white folks who were honorary members of the Black Panther Party. But what we always encouraged young white students to do was to organize within their own community.
Were the kids in Black Panther Party?
There were Black Panther kids that were the children of Black Panthers. We call them Panther Cubs.
Why do you think the party ended?
There was a lot of violence, and the people who really sacrificed their lives did not get a lot of gain from it. Elmer Dixon himself was one of them.
Has anybody tried to harm your, where you stayed?
When I was a Black Panther?
Yeah.
Yes. We had many Black Panthers that were murdered through the FBI operations.
Oh my gosh, they actually killed you guys?
Oh, they were trying to kill us in our sleep and kill us whenever every opportunity they had. At 17 and 18 years old, I had 2 bodyguards.
Did you personally know your bodyguards, or were they just two
Yes,
random people?
I knew my bodyguards. Well, at least I thought I did. One of them turned out to be an FBI agent. It wasn't until 40 years later, through the Freedom of Information Act, we had gotten a hold of our FBI files, and all of the names of people that were agents were in there, and my bodyguard's name was in there.
Did you have any attempts, on your life personally? Because I know you said
Yes,
that.
I did. One occasion, I didn't go with my brother to target practice that day. I was out on another assignment, and my brother went to fire his shotgun, and when he fired it, it exploded.
Oh my!
Someone had doctored the bullets that went into his shotgun and almost blew his arm off.
So they were directly trying to kill you guys?
Oh yes, they were definitely trying to kill us. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
If one of your places, the FBI came in and threatened with guns, did you ever fight back?
Oh,
With
yes.
guns?
Well, not in my time, but they definitely defended themselves with guns.
What do you think about violence and its role in solving problems?
If someone's violent to you, you have to defend yourself. But it's best to be less violent, I think.
What do you guys think hearing these stories of violence and bloodshed?
We're all really familiar with Dr. Martin Luther King, so it's interesting to hear kind of the more violent side.
Yeah, we weren't the violent ones. It was the violence was being targeted at us. We thought it was violent to deny people the right to health care. And when you had babies that couldn't get medicine, that was violent. When you had kids that couldn't eat in the morning, we thought that was violent. So our philosophy was to stand up and not allow ourselves to be attacked by the conditions within our community. That's self-defense.
Do you think that we could benefit in the present right now from the Black Panthers?
Yes, but you don't have to call it the Black Panther Party. It could be any organization. Stay collective, stay together. Power to the people?
Yes, power to the people, yeah.
Your hand together cannot be divided. If you're like this, the wind goes through and all that, you have no power.
Yeah.
This way, the Black Panther Party always had power because they moved in groups. Now, do you see how people are being killed? Like Trayvon Martin. Do you remember Trayvon Martin?
Yeah.
He was walking alone down the street. As a mother, I'm more concerned for my child if they're alone than if they're with a group.
All right, anything else? Elmer, you want to ask the kids anything?
No, you guys are living in a very exciting time. Believe in yourself.
That's what I always do.
Good for you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It was so good to meet you.
Too.
So I hope that after learning a little bit about state-sanctioned executions and assassinations, hold on, it's starting again. I hope that after learning about that video maybe made you smile a little bit, learned a little bit more about the influence of the Black Panther Party. I just want to share 4 resources, because again, what librarian goes to a a Skillshare event and doesn't have resources to share. So if you're interested in learning more about the influence of Malcolm X or the Black Panther Party, and specifically Fred Hampton, who was assassinated, I want to present this. There we go. There are two films that I would highly recommend folks watch. They're both actually Oscar nominated films. Denzel Washington, in my opinion, was robbed of the Best Actor award, which he was nominated for the year that the film came out in 1993. The Best Actor award went to Al Pacino for Scent of a Woman. Anyway, so he stars in essentially like a 3-hour, beautiful, amazing film about the influence of Malcolm X and his life. It's a Spike Lee film, so you know it's going to be amazing. Judas and the Black Messiah just came out last year or 2 years ago, and both Lakeith Stanfield, let me get his name. Yeah, Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya were nominated for their performances, and Daniel actually won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Two books, they are actually children's books, but I highly recommend folks read them if they're interested. X, a novel by Ilyasah Shabazz and Kekla Magoon. So X is actually written by Malcolm X's daughter, and she co-wrote it with Kekla Magoon. And so the book is actually about Malcolm X's childhood before he became Malcolm X. It pretty much ends like as he's going to prison. So it's all about his childhood and what it was like growing up as a Black man in the era that he was living. And last but not least, One Crazy Summer, which I actually have a copy of on my desk. If anybody wants it, I'm happy to put it on the hold shelf for you. It's a story, it's actually a trilogy. It's the first in a trilogy of 3 sisters whose mother is a Black Panther. And so they don't really know her, but they end up spending a summer with her. They live across the country from her, and they spend a summer with her in Oakland. And it's an amazing child perspective of what the Black Panther Party did and how influential it was. So if you're looking for that perspective and kind of want to learn from what it would have been like to be, as we learned in the video, a Panther Cub, One Crazy Summer is an amazing choice, and I highly recommend it. So with that, that concludes today's Black History Moment. I hope you learned something. And that's all.
That was great, Amy.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome. If anybody watches any of those movies too, I would love to have a conversation about them because I was so deeply affected by them. So please call or email me. I'd love to talk about them.
Thank you. You know what's before we leave, you know what's so interesting? I don't want anybody to get offended, but when a white person, when a Hispanic or Black does something wrong, they look at us so wrong, but they don't look at themselves as what they did during all these times wrong. Like, and it is like so disturbing because, you know, they look at us like, oh God, she's Hispanic, she's gonna be a thief, or she's Black, oh God, you better cross the street or whatever, you know, they're gonna jump you, whatever. Look at what the white people did. That was even worse than what the things that any of us have done in this world. It's horrible.
I think that was, to echo exactly what you're saying, Addie, that was the thing that most got me like fired up when I truly learned how deep it went, essentially, to learn that there was an actual FBI program, COINTELPRO, about shutting down the Panthers. I mean, it's just absolutely shocking and absolutely gut-wrenching to know that people's lives were ended because of how influential and radical thinking they were, and the government wanted to shut that down. You think that doesn't happen in the United States, but it did.
It does, yeah.
It did.
It was an amazing. I really enjoyed this.
And also, people don't realize how involved the government was, even during Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. One of the things that J. Edgar Hoover said was, you know, there were too many Black people because of the way now I got lost for words. The Nation of Islam, he said that was too many Black men together, because if you look at the movie Malcolm X, they were all standing there, and at that time, you know, they were dressed, they had a suit tie on, and he just said this man has too much power. And that's why a lot of these civil rights leaders were assassinated because of that. Malcolm X didn't die when he got shot. on that balcony. It was in the hospital. So
Mhm.
there's a lot that has to be learned.
The government was in on that too.
Yes, the government was in on that as well.
Wow.
To be continued. Thank you very
They
much.
continue. Yes. Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.